Well, obviously, it's mainly focused, or it started out its main focus on, in a way, sort of exploring and exposing the Jehovah's Witnesses. And this was after I basically went on my own little adventure from being one to not, through a lot of the community YouTube videos, and I was already sort of interested in film, and I did my own, other YouTube channels. So I felt it kind of natural after I sort of had my own realization about the Jehovah's Witnesses that is sort of, I don't know, I felt it was the only choice I really had, that I had to go in not only talking to other people about what they do, what I've been through, but also as an exploration of finding out more about it myself and discovering how ignorant I was to my own religion and what they actually do.
And what is it, you say ignorant to your own religion. And of course, like you and I probably know exactly what we mean when you say that, right? When we're talking about specifically what Jehovah's Witnesses believe, kind of what the organization has done in the past, especially, internationally as well. But like, what do you mean when you say, what you were ignorant of? What does that refer to?
Well, at first, it's a lot of the control levels that you're unaware of when you're in it, when you're being controlled. And that's definitely a starting point for almost any religion. But then with the JW specifically, one of the biggest ones is the Australian Royal Commission and the worldwide issues on covering up child molesters and such. And it was always something that we knew about the Catholics having that issue, for example. And that was just something we knew, but it was never something you imagined it was in our own church,
Yeah.
And seeing that, and then seeing how well it's being covered up in my own areas, that's where I was like, nah, this is so not the way to go. Like, this is just, you can't keep believing any of that once you see that.
Yeah. And like, I think that's what a lot of people don't realize when it comes to the Jehovah's Witnesses. I could definitely say for myself a few years ago, if you had asked me who a Jehovah's Witness was, I would say, well, they're those guys that go around door to door telling people about Jesus, and then they don't celebrate birthdays. Like that was like the two. Oh, and like Michael Jackson was one of them, right? Like that was
Pretty
like
much.
the three facts I knew about Jehovah's Witnesses. And I imagine for most Americans, that's probably their understanding of it as well. They might see it as maybe a more secluded sect of Christianity, but like the ins and outs may not be super well known. But when you really dig into it and you understand the systemic kind of cover-ups, and this isn't like conspiracy theory, like this is stuff you can find public documents of court records that have happened, of cases that have gone on for like all kinds of systemic cover-ups that have happened all over the place, mostly in regards to, again, child abuse, but also just other kinds of shady stuff as well, as far as like what exactly they do with their money and their donations and stuff is kind of also up in the air, and also has a lot of questions to it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, originally, if you looked at it from the outside, you'd look at them as like this is a couple decades ago, you'd look at them as a publishing company. Most of their merchandise and what they push is the literature. They don't do so much of that anymore. A lot of that's gone to internet, and it's all online sort of stuff. And a lot of where the money gets turned over now is in real estate. They were always into real estate. It's just now it's more obvious because they don't have that facade of, I know we're just pushing literature and that's how we make our money.
Which is interesting.
Like a lot of their money with real estate.
Yeah, which is like, I guess now I've come to recently realize that's what the Mormons kind of do too. Like they own so much land that they develop on and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's because they don't have to pay the same kinds of taxes that a regular business does. So
and a lot of the time it's donated land or donated efforts to build the buildings. And that's at least what it's like with the JWs. A lot of time it's just that one of the members has land. They decide to give it, in air quotation marks, give it to the watchtower, and then with contributions from everyone else in the congregation. They put money towards it, or if somebody's a builder, they'll put resources towards building the building, and they'll basically get an entire building on a estate for virtually free. And then a couple of years down the track, they'll split that congregation up into other halls and sell that land for as much profit they can. It's all profit, and they just do that on the regular rolling.
Now that's kind of fascinating because I know that a belief or at least an idea that's pushed amongst a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses is that you shouldn't go to college. You shouldn't actually kind of, shall we say, bring your education level up larger than, what you get out of high school, I guess. There's not like a huge push for that. In fact, if anything, the literature I've seen is kind of pushed against it. So the idea that there are a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses who are like these, at least wealthy enough to be big landowners and stuff, you'd think that they'd have, I don't know, like a higher education to be able to have some of that, pull some of that off. But I don't know. I don't know what those anonymous donations must be like.
Well, obviously, a lot of the time you're going to be, a lot of these people are going to be people that have lived their lives outside of, religion. They've found religion, and they were already sort of wealthy. So a lot of the time what will happen there is eventually over time, the elders maybe of the congregation, they'll start pressuring that person about their wealth and how, hard to get into, heaven, harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel.
Yeah, the eye of the needle, right?
Like
trying to get a camel through the eye of the needle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they'll just sort of pressure them eventually. And that'll be the sort of person they'll look at for acquiring said wealth, because they know that they can pressure them to lose their personal wealth and then, being a good sort of person.
So in other words, they kind of do some targeted marketing kind of when it comes to who they're looking for to kind of convert to become a Jehovah's Witness, right?
It won't necessarily be on the streets. It'll be if they've already, if they've found that person and they've started coming in, then they'll do that targeted marketing. Like they won't necessarily do that while they were doing, door-to-door sort of street work and stuff, because that's just literally every door,
Yeah, because, I think of, again, making another comparison with Scientology, for example. There are people that do sort of the street level stuff, but obviously they have a lot of like Hollywood influencers and a lot of like big business people. So like somehow the word is getting out among those people. I guess maybe some guy knows another guy and it just goes from there, or maybe they have a list, or maybe they pull some sort of data. I don't know how that goes. But clearly there is like an agenda to get like the big money people. It's just like what a lot of large nonprofit organizations and other kind of charities do. They want to get a certain audience that has the money, and they want to target to those specific individuals. And they might do it through different ways. But like, I guess I'm talking about this because a lot of people don't view churches in the paradigm of businesses, but really like that's when a lot of them are at the end of the day. And that's what I think of when I think of the Jehovah's Witness. I just think they're a much more oppressive business structure than most, right?
I'd think so. I mean, but yeah, as you say, like all of them, it's all about the dollars. I mean, it might be about the faith for those going praying every Sunday, but for the people that are actually up there in charge that run the place, it's just about the dollars.
Yeah, and it sounds so cynical, but I mean, just time and time again, it shows itself to be true, just through all the court cases you see, and just all the big transactions that happen with this kind of stuff. I mean, the people going to church is not necessarily the same people that they're thinking about at the end of the day. They're thinking about other stuff. They're thinking about other people that they want to get or other goals in mind. It's not necessarily for the well-being of each individual that is a member of the organization, which is terrible. And of course, I think another thing too with Jehovah's Witnesses that people think of is, of course, the specific predictions that people talk about. That's probably another stereotype, this idea that, Jehovah's Witnesses will, keep falling for these different predictions and stuff. But like, that's not something that's super talked about amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, as far as I understand. If they do, there's always some rationalization for it, right?
Yeah, well, these days especially, because the last of that really ended in about the 70s, I think, and that was
Mm-hmm.
one of their last predictions that didn't, work out, or direct, specific, dated predictions that didn't go through. And ever since then, they will definitely be more vague about it. Like it's something they know is close or whatever. Like there's no specific date on things because of the embarrassment of how many times they did that and it didn't. Nothing happened. The world kept spinning. So
Yeah, so I was talking to somebody the other day who's kind of new to the whole atheist thing, and they were asking like, well, how can people believe in something like that or be a part of something like that when there's like demonstrable evidence of the beliefs being false in the past, and I kind of gave an answer to what I thought, but like what's your opinion on that? Like how do people come to beliefs or believe in the organization as a whole when it's kind of demonstrated in the past not to be credible?
well, I can only really speak from my experience there, and that's somebody that was born into it. Like when you're growing up,
Mm,
you can be sold whatever, and you'll buy it. That's your world is being crafted. And so they can craft it how they want.
mhm.
I don't understand myself how new people that have lived a life and then come into it, that I don't understand. I'd be in the same. Like I wouldn't have a clue how you'd have to especially if you've got a bit of an education behind you, like how all the stuff you'd have to rationalize. I'm
Right.
not sure. It'd just have to be something out of passion, I'd say.
Yeah, I feel you. I understand how somebody growing up in the faith can rationalize it, right? Because it's kind of all they've ever known on some level, and when it's so integral to your identity, I can see how it's hard to break away from that. But yeah, someone who is over the age of 18 coming to the faith, that's definitely a lot harder for me to understand. I mean, I guess I can understand it like pre-internet time, but now where we have
Sure.
so much accessibility to the resources that we do, it would be hard. I wouldn't understand the reasons for why somebody would become a Jehovah's Witness in 2020. Like that would be hard for me to grasp.
I still reckon it'd be the same reason for most people going into any. It'd just be like whether it be a desperate moment or they're searching for something and that's what they found,
Mm.
or you know, little things like that where people aren't as gung ho about what they know and they're open to things that are a bit silly.
Yeah, maybe they're looking for new explanations for things in their life. They're trying new ideas. Maybe they had a good experience in a gathering
I
of
mean,
some sort. Yeah.
it can be the same reason a perfectly well educated person, middle aged, whatever, um, can fall for conspiracy.
Mm,
And
mm,
otherwise, they're not a conspiracy theorist, general, not a what we'd think of as a wacko in any way, but they can still
sure.
fall for some conspiracy that
Yeah.
might have no real validity.
I think the conspiracy thing, though, I think that fulfills almost a different desire in people because with conspiracy theories, a lot of it is people seeing weird stuff in the news or noticing certain trends. And these conspiracy theories are kind of tying a whole narrative thread as to why an explanation for what they're seeing, right? And obviously, religious beliefs do the same thing, but like, the narrative for religion is so cosmic, you know what I mean? It's so unifying in all things that it almost seems like a bigger pill for me to swallow than to say, oh, well, Bill Gates started the coronavirus or something, like you can say that without
Um,
looking.
Absolutely, but it's that same
Mhm,
mindset. So, like, you're still going through the same processes as a person to believe it, and I think
mhm,
that's why it could be different reasons, could be different. Like you're going into it for a whole different reason, obviously. Because as you say, like a conspiracy theories, could be about some, Bill Gates or Soros or whoever the hell,
mhm.
Whereas with a religion, it is so over. It's covers so many things. Um, but I still think you're going into it the same way. you're still only looking for something, not knowing what the answer is, and you're sort of just letting it answer itself as you go along, without sort of going through and checking everything that you're reading or everything you're learning. You're just taking it at face value. And it only takes a little bit of that before you start getting hooked, whether it's in conspiracy or in the Bible.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I just want to remind people also that this is a call-in show. We are live right now on YouTube. You might eventually be hearing this in podcast form or on YouTube somewhere else. But if you're watching the show live, we got a couple open lines, and me and NotJah, we'd love to talk to you. It doesn't have to be about Jehovah's Witnesses or anything like that. We talk about what people believe and why. And if your thought or question falls into that category, feel free to call into the number in the corner there. NotJah, I do want to ask, you were a Jehovah's Witness and now you're not, obviously. You mentioned that other YouTube videos kind of were influential on you, but now that you're making YouTube videos of your own, I mean, there's so many people that just, leave the faith and then just kind of move on with their lives. And that, I'm not saying you haven't moved on, obviously, but you're still continuing to talk about a lot of the issues that you faced when you were a Jehovah's Witness, and also, keeping up on tabs with the Jehovah's Witnesses, seeing what they're doing and stuff, and kind of responding to stuff. Why do you choose to continue to be involved with this? Why is this important to you?
Well, in a basic way of putting it, it's not burning the bridge behind me. Or not closing the door of opportunity that I found on all the people that are still in it, and especially when there's stuff like the allegations of molestation going on. When you learn that, you can't ignore it. You can't just be like, oh well, I'm out, I'm okay, I'll just walk away and let them fuck kids. You can't do that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to just walk away from that,
even
if it was knowing how much control they have over people. I don't even like that. Even if that was all it was, I still want to try and help other people. They can still choose to be a JW. There's no problem there. If that's what they want, knowing full well what they're into, fine. Good for them. I would never stand in their way for that. If your faith is strong enough as well, there's no way I'd ever be able to shake it. But I still want to be able to reach out to those and be like, you do realize though that, they're not telling you the truth, or that there's more to the story, or, because I know that they either don't know or that they are actively ignorant. Like they're choosing to not consider these things, that they're real. It's fake news, basically,
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day too, actually, because it's like if I'm talking to somebody about this and they aren't concerned, that would concern me that you're not concerned. You know what I mean? Like if you don't think that this is important, like then my value set must be so different than yours. Because I agree, especially with like the child abuse stuff, like come on, like this should be a rallying cry for everybody to kind of look into it. I mean, if you look at the QAnon stuff right now, I follow the QAnon conspiracy narrative a bit, and they get so riled up about the deep state and the elites are actually all satanic pedophiles and stuff. And they get so mad when they think about this stuff. And it's like, look, we already have like a real pedophile group out there. It's the Catholic Church.
The ones that we know that
and the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah. And just like, that stuff's going on all the time. And maybe it's because we're so used to it now. Like we almost don't even think we can do anything about it. Like we just feel like it's always going to be a thing, even though it really doesn't have to. There are ways to prevent this, but I don't know. Some people just don't value things the same way you or I might. I
always thought, is it possible that some of these people are kind of in a bit of denial, especially people that aren't in it and have no real association? They've just heard these stories. Because there's no real grounding of legal precedent here. There's no one getting arrested. It's not, these charges are being laid for all these people. Because it's not going through that, I imagine a lot of people might be in denial about it. Like, well, it's not really happening. That's just these awful rumors that people spread,
Yeah, like it's almost not even real. It's just stories. Yeah. Yeah, I could
because
definitely see
that happens with a lot of cases of any sort of abuse, especially when it's sort of a relationship or sexual abuse. This all too often, the people that are actually the victims aren't believed over the ones in power.
that.
You know, oh, they're just good Christians. Why would you make up such a story? Or it'd be, oh, well, you had one bad experience. You shouldn't tarnish the lot because of that. You know, all that kind of just one bad egg bullshit that we
Right, but
inherit.
how many bad eggs does it take to make a bad omelet? You know, it's
Yeah.
like
I mean,
it,
it's one thing if there was a bad egg, then why don't they kick the bad egg out? No, they don't do that. They send them to another congregation and hide the evidence.
right. There's a subreddit called like Pastor Arrested. And I swear it gets updated, if not every day, like every other day, with stories about some religious leader in the world getting arrested for, 90% of the time it's for sexual misconduct, if not some other horrible thing, money laundering or whatever. And like it's constantly happening all the time, all over the world. But it doesn't hit the mainstream news all the time, I guess, or it's not on the front page of the New York Times or anything most of the time because it's so inconsequential to most people's lives. Like a pastor abusing somebody in Florida really doesn't mean much to you or me in terms of our daily life. But like that mattered to somebody in Florida, you know what I mean? And it's going to keep mattering to people every day until there's solutions that are found to some of these problems. But yeah, until it happens to you, I guess. And maybe that's the thing too, since we are both former really like religious people and we were involved in that lifestyle, we're more invested in it than somebody who wasn't. But I
Yeah.
don't know. There's secular people too that were always atheists or always secular that are involved with us too. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But